just want to start off by thanking General President Eric Dean, Bill Brown, and CEO Kevin Hilton for the privilege and opportunity to moderate this panel, the Classic Contractor panel, which could also be called the Living Legends panel. So, thank you. And with that, we'll do a quick bio, and then we'll get into the meat and potatoes of the discussion. So if you would introduce yourself.
Good morning. I'm Tom Seeley. I went to work as an iron worker first in February of '64. Worked a number of years in different locals, and then went to 433 in LA and became a member there, book number 879447. I stayed in raising gangs most of my time, and then in '76 I joined Rigging International and did rigging jobs around the country. I actually worked in 7 different countries in pretty much every port city in the nation. Now I'm working for a company called Bond Miller. I was one of the, I guess, renegades that fought change, fought safety all along until I finally grew up. And now I'm actually imposing safety on people because I'm the safety manager for Bond Miller Construction. And truly see the reason for it. We have many more of our members alive and well, not crippled because of the safety programs. And a lot of it has to do with impact, imposing the different things and showing us how to do it the right way. So thank you for allowing me to be here.
I'm Bill Treharn. In 1964, I graduated from Michigan State as a structural engineer, and I joined American Bridge. They built the Mackinac Bridge, and I figured if they could build that leg, I could do that good too. So anyways, I went to American Bridge, and they put me in the field for several years, working with iron workers. We'll buy that, lunch and everything like that. So I really learned the business from the iron workers side of the business. And then I went from the largest fabricator erector, American Bridge, in the country to the smallest, which was Broad Crane and Engineering Service Company, which had 3 guys in the shop and 2 ironworker foremen that were guaranteed 24 hours a week. And that was owned by Gary Broad's father, Harry Broad, and Tom Broad's grandfather, Harry Broad. And so we went from there and we built that company up. And then I went to Midwest Steel, and we build all kinds of things in Midwest Steel. So I've had, I've been in the business, again, it'll be 60 years in July 6th of this year. And then I worked in 34 different states. I worked in Canada, I worked in Mexico, and I worked in Guinea, West Africa. And I don't know it all, but I'm still learning.
And I'm Sherman Ladner, and I'm Canadian, eh? So I kind of went a different road. I started in construction when I was 13 years old. I was a packer operator for a road building company. I worked 60 hours the first week as a 13-year-old. I was getting $1.50 an hour. So I made $90 at the end of the week, and I invested it wisely. I bought a transistor radio. So I fell in love with construction. I thought, this is what I want to do with the rest of my life. I wasn't quite sure what that was going to look like. I wanted to become an iron worker, but I was afraid of heights. I'm actually afraid of sitting in this chair. I'm so high off the ground. So I went to the dark side. I didn't become a millwright. I actually graduated from the University of Toronto in the mid-'70s with an engineering degree. Upon graduation, I went to work for large industrial civil contractors in Canada. I became president of Aecon Industrial. Aecon in Canada is the largest publicly traded company, construction company. And so I was walking down the hallway one day, and the seat for the president's office was open, and I went in and sat down and spent a few years doing that. I moved over to Alberici in the early 2000s. I spent a number of years there as president of Alberici's Canadian operations. And so I worked in construction for 50 years, and I've been retired for 10 years. So being the smart engineer that I am, I can total it up. There's 13 and 50 and 10 makes me 73 years old. If I were an American citizen, and if I lived for another 3 or 4 years, I would be eligible to run for president of this wonderful country.
There we go.
Vic.
Hi, and Vic Cornelia is my name, Washington, D.C. area. In 1977, we started this company called TSI, and today it's called TSI Corporation. So we're an ornamental curtain wall contractor in that region. It's amazing to be sitting here today, because I never thought I would be sitting here today with 47 years of having this company running. And the reason it's still strong and going is that we've passed on to the second generation. And this isn't a message that for anyone out there that's in the same situation. 95% of second generation companies fail. And they do that because the second generation either is not interested in it, or they've been given that silver spoon, so to speak, or they don't know how to do the business and whatnot. And one thing I've passed on to our younger generation, and my youngest son runs the whole operation at the moment, is the fact that I've got strong relationships. And I've got strong relationships with our vendors. I've got strong relationships with our contractors and our owners. But more importantly, I've got a strong relationship with this international union. And that'll never change. And I've passed that on to the next generation. And I'm going to make sure they continue to do that. It's a very important element, because without, and we're a 100% union ironworking contracting company. Never have we involved with carpenters, glazers, sheet metal workers, any of that sort of thing. It's been 100% union ironworking, and it'll never change. And so sitting here today and being able to say that is that when I get home and let the next generation know that we've had this session and this meeting, that we're passing that message on. And the expectation is that they're going to continue this in the generations and decades as we go forward. So thanks for the opportunity of being here. Thank you, Eric, for inviting me. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Vic. Thank you, everyone. We're going to throw it back to our Canadian man here, Sherman. If you wouldn't mind sharing some of your favorite memories of working with the ironworkers, please.
Thanks, Kevin. When I was thinking about this, I think it's the last job that I helped acquire for Alberici. And this was a project in Saskatchewan, in rural Saskatchewan. It was a company called K+S, and it was a potash mining facility. And now we approached this project as Alberici. We got pre-qualified to go after the work. And then during my discussions with the owners of the project, it became clear that we probably needed a partner to get the work done. It was a big fast-track job. And just like lobbying that goes on here in the States, lobbying with the owner is important for the contractor. So we teamed up with, I got a hold of my good buddy Walter Koppler, and we teamed up with Walters, and together we went after the project, and we were successful in winning the project. It was around 26,000 tons of steel. It had 500 plus equipment modules to be put in place. It was fast track. It was in the middle of nowhere. It was a camp environment. The weather is harsh, high winds, temperatures in the wintertime, 40 degrees below and Fahrenheit. And so some pretty severe conditions. And we were competing with a lot of other projects in Western Canada for the labor force. And thankfully, Local 771, Colin Daniels, wherever you are, and his team, they stepped up to the plate. And quite honestly, a lot of the labor force came from across Canada, and some of it actually came from the US. I think out of Chicago, there was quite a few players that came up, and we finished the job on time, and we're not going to talk about budget.
Thank you. Bill, you've literally worked with the ironworkers on hundreds of jobs. Can you share some stories about some of the bigger challenges you've had with the ironworkers, or the job itself?
Yeah, well, I got two really. I mean, because in the 70s, we were a gang truck company. So you have different things. And one of the things that Harry Broad was very friends with the N&W Railroad, and they had all these crazy things with the railroad and the Basque bridges. And I remember one in the Basque Bridge that the trunnion gears needed to be replaced. And they were in a house, a trunnion gear house. So you had a 2-foot diameter pinion gear, and then you had a 8-foot diameter gear on the other end of a shaft that's about 8 feet long. And so we got the job, and I was scared because, getting that thing out of this house. So they took the window down, and I was talking to iron workers, and I had this great rigger, Paul Feaster, and he said, I know how to do this. And I said, okay, so we did it. So he had four members of his gang. He was a foreman in 4 gangs, and he had come-alongs and chain falls. And he picked this non-balanced shaft out of this thing, and he would say, Charlie, get up on that come-along there, and then, buddy, back off on yours. And he picked this thing up, and he walked it out of this window, and so we could grab it with a hydraulic crane and set it on a truck where it went to the machine shop and got ready, and then we had to go back and get it. That was a very difficult job, and when I was a gang truck guy. All right. Then when I got to Midwest Steel, I mean, we do stadiums and arenas and a lot of structural steel, big structural steel jobs. And as an engineer, my focus has been to make sure that we had a safe erection procedure, an engineered safe erection procedure. And that's very difficult because the designs these days are designed by a lot of young people that are not familiar with the old way of doing it, because they put it in a model and they flick a switch and it puts all the gravity and the wind loads and the seismic loads on it at one time. We erect it one piece at a time, and the gravity goes right with it, and the wind goes right with it. And when you got a job that's open framed, and we do rack jobs, which is really open frames, but structural jobs and everything like this, it is more forceful on the wind is more forceful on that structure than it is when it's all enclosed, because every piece has a windward side and a leeward side, and the leeward side sucks it and the wind pushes on this side. So you have to worry about that, and the job is not to let it fall down when you're doing it, and plus you got issues with safety and tie-offs and things like this that you have to do. So those have been tough to do it, and I used to work, I work with engineers that I've worked with since American Bridge, and we have engineering procedures, and first of all, you get the foreman, the superintendent, and our field manager involved when you're developing the plan. And so then they say how we're going to do it, and then I have engineers, they say whether you can do it or not, or how it takes to get this done. So those are the difficult jobs, but the thing that I don't lose sleep over at night if I don't have that is something to fall down when we're erecting it.
Thank you. Vic, if you could go back in time when you first started TSI, is there anything you would change or look at different? In hindsight, what you might change with TSI?
Well, that's an interesting question. I'm going to make a note here that Toby Keith, we all know Toby Keith just passed away recently. Yeah. And Toby Keith wrote a song, and he wrote a song that called Do Not Let the Old Man In. Don't let the old man in. And there's a phrase in that song that says, if you didn't know the year you were born, how old do you think you would be? And that parallel to the business, and I think back on that question, Kevin, and the fact is that you get plagued by what it is you don't know. And sometimes, and as this principal speaker had mentioned earlier, when Muhammad Ali says, you don't get knocked down, you're getting back up and recovering. And being in business, I've always wanted to be an entrepreneur. It was part of the DNA, and that's what I was able to do that. But the challenges are there. And so not knowing what the threats are, you're plagued by that sort of thing. And something comes along that, excuse me, creates great risk. And your success in all that you're doing and accomplishing comes back to what your relationships are. Age has nothing to do with it. Experience has a lot to do with it. And the fact that I don't think we'd ever do anything different in regards to our relationship with our union trade, with the iron workers, without a doubt. That has been the one given that has proven to be a major element in the success of our company. And that's going to continue to be the same thing. So the question is, I wouldn't change anything, but if you go into a situation with your eyes closed and your ears closed and you're not listening to what's coming up, there's a lot of four-letter words in this industry, and they're not what you're thinking, if you're thinking. They are, I've always said, it's cost, it's cash flow, and risk. And those are challenges. They're enormous challenges. And so I wouldn't change anything, Kevin. This is given the opportunity to grow and develop and continue, and getting knocked on your butt, you're picking yourself back up, and getting knocked on your butt, pick yourself back up. That's the chain of events that create the success, and I wouldn't change anything.
Thank you. So Tom, we have a GC, we have a steel erector, we have an ornamental company here. Now I know you've played all the instruments over your career, but right now you're in the pre-engineered world. What type of challenges in your scope of work do you see coming in the pre-engineered world? And just a shout out to Dave Baird, who does a great job for our metal building department. And there's a big market there. So why don't you share some stories about the challenges of metal buildings and how they've evolved over the years?
Okay. Well, we're on a Microsoft site in a town called Wenatchee, Washington. At the present time, there's 4 of the buildings in sight of each other. When they complete the projects, the 2 campuses, as they call them, there'll be 11 of them within sight of each other. There's a city called Quincy, which is only like 20 miles away. They have 15 of them going there. Bond-Miller came on board as an organized company. They were well-versed in the trade and all that, had about 25 of their own people. We mixed them with a group of people all out of the Northwest District Council. We had one other gentleman out of 378, but everybody was out of 29, 86, 14. 14 being a smaller market, the ironworkers there are more diverse, true journeymen. They weld, they burn, they do rods, they do metal buildings. So we were able to gather a great number of people and mix the groups together. It turned into a wonderful thing due to the fact that Bond-Miller had agreed to what Microsoft's globalization safety policy. They mandate certain requirements, and instead of fighting those requirements, we decided to buy into them 100%. That opened up a door for us. We have 2 gentlemen, one out of 86 and one out of 14, that were recognized by Microsoft as award winners because they bought into the policy. They were 20-year or so veterans with reputations of, sort of balking the rules, you might say. Now that they bought into it, the younger people fall in line with that. The metal building is still putting a bolt in the hole, but there's a specialized manner in which it goes up. It was pretty much, in my understanding, run by non-union people. Now, Bond-Miller has been offered the opportunity to bid something like 18 different projects around the nation. We've signed an international agreement. We also have the fact is if Bond-Miller gets the part to supply the iron, but is not capable of erecting it, we will give that erection contract to only another union contractor. So I think it's working well with that type of concept, and the recognition is as the companies change, major companies like Microsoft, billionaires, they set their own policies. And you can argue the fact that it's not part of L&I or it's not something else, but you're going to have to adhere to them. So if you take the time to buy into the policy and use your energy doing that as opposed to taking the time to try to fight it or argue against it, you'll be much further ahead. The halls have furnished everybody that we've needed. we're sort of having an incubator, you might say. We're mentoring more and more people at that site with the guys that are steady bond miller hands and the ones that have been integrated into it. And hopefully we'll be able to go around the nation putting up buildings, union buildings. That's pretty much what's going on with it. Again, the support of the unions are 100%. Chris McLean, organized bond miller. He runs the Northwest District and is working hand in glove with us to make sure that everybody is furnished in the proper manner, the people are trained. Safety policies, again, I get to be the safety manager this time, probably because I'm too old to work. But it does fall into a true aspect. It will adhere to what the major companies want and find a way of working with it and still be productive, as opposed to arguing or fighting it. It works out better. I'd like to explain. One time I remember when I was running a job for rigging, they came up with this thing called PTP, a pre-task plan. I thought it was the most ridiculous thing I'd ever heard of. The hell, I'd hire journeyman iron workers. All they had to do is get up in the air and do it. So we fought it for a while, and that's why I'm telling you from experience, if you pay attention to what is mandated and what is required and just adhere to it, work with it, find a way of being productive and doing it, you're far better ahead and you'll move faster.
Thank you. So I'll start off with Vic in this question. And some of you worked in other states. Some of you, like Bill mentioned, worked all in different countries. Sherman, both the U.S. and Canada. Vic, did you always feel supported by the local unions you worked with?
Oh, never.
And have you had any challenges with business managers when you're going into a local and you're maybe an outside contractor or you're somebody new, and want to share some stories, and then we'll go down the line, please.
Well, it goes back, as again, the company, this is I think our 47th year. So I've been through a lot of business agents through Local 5 in Washington, and we're doing some work in a couple other areas. But primarily, the relationship has been key. And the transition that I've seen, and I'm going to give you two definitions. When I first got involved with the union trade, pretty much, you had two types of workers. You had union worker, you had company union worker. And I think what's happened today is a transition, and we've experienced it, is that you have a partnership. And that is where the success has been. The partnership is just like any other relationship. It's an understanding what the needs, requirements, limitations, expectations are of the other group involved. And I will say for sure that we've been able to have bridged a partnership so that we flow back and forth, at least in the Washington, D.C. area. And I will always give credit to the fact that we've had a willingness on the union side, the management side. I hate to say sides because I don't like to have divisions. I'd rather think of it as a unified group of people working for the same purpose. And we just have a little bit different interests, but understanding those interests and negotiating and making it real so that something that we can live with is a very key element and a goal. And we've accomplished that. And I don't expect that ever to change. And the other aspect of it is from a safety standpoint, is the fact that in our company, we have what they call the modification safety mod rate of about 0.52. We've had that for decades now. And that doesn't happen by itself. It happens because we're getting safety. It's a biblical thing, sort of an arrangement that safety is the number one priority. And work experience, certification, qualifications is the second. But the safety aspect of it is what has been successful, and we want to continue to do that. So we'll make no changes.
Sherman, Bill, Tom, you want to share some stories about challenges you might have went when you went into other parts?
Well, it's interesting. Quite honestly, I'm not the guy with the boots on the ground. When I was running Acon Industrial Group, we were multi-trade contractor, and when I was running Alberici, we were a multi-trade contractor as well. So we employed, the bricklayers and carpenters and pipe fitters and millwrights. And through all of those times, we had lots of challenges on our projects, lots of challenges. But over the years, and this is me personally, this is not about Alberici or about Acon. I'm not employed by either one of those groups right now. I'm not sure I ever will be again either, but personally, I had such a great relationship with the ironworkers. They supported our companies, they supported me personally wherever we went. And it was a real pleasure to work with the ironworkers. Actually, I sat on the pension benefit plan for the ironworkers in Ontario. They have great benefits, by the way. But quite honestly, the ironworkers, I've never had a problem. I've always enjoyed my relationship with the ironworkers. And congratulations to you guys for all the efforts you put in to become the professional group that you really are, and to supply the contractors with the professional help they need.
The one thing that I've learned in my years in working in this industry is that when the union and the companies work together, we create miracles. I mean, some of the things we go to bid and everything, you think, how the hell am I going to do this, you know? But when we work together, we get it. But it always has, I mean, back in the 60s and the 70s and even the 80s, there were some problems that some of the locals in this country were demanding things. I mean, we had Local 40 in New York, we had Local 1 in Chicago, we had John Bowden in Jacksonville. You know, they wanted to run the job. And the evolution has come out that people realize that we're not enemies, we're partners. And when we do that, and that's been a big change in the last several years anyways, that people are thinking, and then I think it starts with when we're bidding a job, and I was in charge of estimating at Midwest Steel, and so I would talk to the business manager and business agent to see what his thoughts were and what our thoughts were. We would, before we bid the job, we would talk about whether they have, you know, if they have everybody on the bench or nobody on the bench, you know, it would always make a difference, and how much we're going to have to bring in, you know, it's, you know, for travelers, and then so that we get start the team, and then if we get the job, then Brad Hetzer, our field manager, he goes and he develops a relationship with that local. And that means a lot because, again, it's nice to hear that we're working in some place that we're working together. Because, again, we create miracles in that thing. And so it's, you know, I've gone through, you know, some major changes. You know, in the early 70s, we had OSHA come in. And then we also had the MNAPC. You know, what do you mean I'm not going to work for time and a half. I want a double bubble. That's the way it is, you know. And it took a couple, 3 years to get everybody focused on that's the rules now. And the same with OSHA. You know, iron workers didn't want to tie off. What do you mean? That's sissy stuff. We can do better whether we don't tie off. Well, it was a culture change, and then with the thing, and I was on the ANSI committee, the A10, and I was chairman of the A10-13, which is a steel erection conference, and we tried to work that out. And the A10 committee has 1/3 union representatives, 1/3 management, and 1/3 consultants. And some of these consultants, they think that the guys come to work to fill out paperwork, you know. And I would say how we made some changes is that we make simple changes in the safety procedure, something that the guy in the field that's a connector or the hook-on man or the welder and that, he understands or she understands what's going on, and make it simple so that they execute it, because that's what it's all about. You talk about that, your EMR, it's, you know, 0.5, that's fantastic, you know, but that's what you have to take, that you have to take all that. And when you got the union and the companies working together, again, we create miracles.
Sounds like impact.
Well, I think it's important, as Bill mentioned, for contractors to understand that each local union is a business also, run by a business manager or president. If you share information with them, they can become partners. You arm them with all the tools they need. You know exactly when you're going to get to a facility. You know how many people you think you're going to need. You know how many hours you're intending to work, what the project entails. If you want true partnership, you have to share with your partners and give them that information so they can work with you. I had an opportunity when I worked for Rigging International to go to a number of different cities. And if you, again, being an ironworker and being part of the international, one book is as good as the other when you go around. If you go in and introduce yourself, call the people ahead of time, let them know that you're coming, that there's a project, the length of it. The business managers and business agents can work with you much better. You're arming them with the proper tools for them to do their job to truly be a partner with the companies. If you're not doing that, you're making a mistake because you're not letting a group of great people who can really help you facilitate your job not being able to help you. You surprise somebody, you show up the day before a job, you need 25 people. What type of partnership is that type? You need to work together to share as much information as you can on both sides. And then the unions in turn also have to come back and let you know what the conditions are in that particular local area you're with. Communication, I find, is, now that I've gotten older and paid attention to it, is probably the best thing we have going. The more you share, the more you know.
Good. So Colin Millard, Assistant to General President Eric Dean, and Mark Thomas, Assistant to General Secretary Bryanton, just wrapped up new officer training conducted in Local 5. 73 newly elected officers went through a week's course of training. All the departments in the international come in, they explain to them what to do, explain to them our expectations of our newly elected officers. It's kind of a support group, right? We work with each other. So one of my questions was, why do you think I got that? Why do you think you get the support? But I think you guys have already touched on the reasons you got the support. It's all about relationships, right? And develop a relationship. If they're successful, our members go to work. If our members are professional, highly skilled, things work out good for the contractors. So I think we asked about that. So we also conduct advanced business manager training yearly. So some of the more weathered business managers, technology changes, things change. So we bring them back in too, and they share best practices of what they've been going through as business managers. Look at Keith Harkey here running one of our biggest locals here in Los Angeles. There you go. And things like that. So we bring people back. We make sure that we're constantly striving to improve our leadership's training, what they do, giving them the tools. So things like that. Let's move on to what do you think the most important element of your success with Midwest, Bill? What do you think the reason that Midwest is so successful? Can you touch on some of that?
Well, I liked Mark Breslin's talk about that as far as treating people right. That's the thing, is that you got to treat them right. And again, one of the best things I think the ironworkers have gotten going for them is our apprentice program. I mean, because, the jurisdiction ironworkers are everything from raising iron to rigging, re-rod, ornamental, miscellaneous, glazing. Even glazing gets involved with the ironworker, And so you got to teach all that stuff, and they do a good job in that, and they have good stuff. Because when I first got involved with the apprentice programs, the books were World War II books. And they were like copies of types of things in black and white folders. And then when Impact got involved and the National Training Fund, and they redid all the books and everything. And now they got an internet service, and that kind of stuff. So it's really important that we got to keep our union strong. We got to keep our apprenticeship program strong. And in Detroit, one of the things that we did was we partnered up with the operators of Local 324, and we built a raising gang outside, which a raising gang structure, which has a one bay, 6-story, and it's got an industrial building next to it, and it's got all the trusses and columns and everything like this that they get out. And we went to a program that was they call it a weekly program, a 50-hour week. So in the old days, the apprentices used to go to school one day every 2 weeks. And, they weren't there, but we went to block training, and it was 50 hours. So in the racing gang, they'd be out the racing gang, and plus we figured out who the top racing gang foremen were in Local 25, and got them together, and it took like 6 months to do it, but we milked them for all the good ideas, and we built a little packet that they could put in their back pocket, and they really used that. And when they train these people, and it's like poetry in motion. I mean, the racing gang, it always floats my boat when you got a good feeling, you get that good momentum and everything like that, and the guys are laughing and and paying attention to what they're doing. But it's a great process, and it's just fun. And back in the 70s, they had Miller time, and it was about the iron worker. And you got done with the day, and we don't do it these days, but they'd slide down the column, and it was Miller time. And that was always the feeling that people got when you got a good day up. You set 100 pieces, and you felt good about that, and you went out and had a beer.
Well, I appreciate you, Bill, mentioning our training. We pride ourselves. Lee Worley, our training director, and Vic Cornier sits as the management trustee on the National Training Fund every year. I think just about everybody in the room knows that the International does a lot of great things, but anybody that's ever been out to Ann Arbor, when they leave from those classes for a week, they're blown away on just how everything just goes, how it flows out there. I remember when I was asked to be an instructor, a welding instructor, I knew how to weld, but I didn't know how to teach a class. So, you could have great iron workers, but that doesn't make them a great teacher. So what we try to do with that is make sure that the people that are going to instruct our apprentices have professional development courses, and then they fine-tune the other half of the day of what they're actually going to be teaching when they go back. And man, when they're leaving Ann Arbor and things like that, they're fired up about going back and sharing that information with all the apprentices that they're going to do. And so, let's go into let's see, what would you recommend business model local union and contractors working together, and why should contractors that are getting involved with the ironworkers or new contractors? We got a big organizing drive. If you were an open shop contractor and talking to you guys, what would you say to a contractor on the values of becoming a union signatory?
Well, if you're really concerned about your employees, you're concerned about the fact that they have pensions, they have securities. As was mentioned earlier today, they have time at home. You wind up, everybody makes a wage, but what are you doing for the future? Within the ironworker program, you're not only tasked to do your job, but you're tasked also to share your knowledge with the apprentice. It's encouraged that happens. That's how the trade continues to grow. So by joining the union, you have the backing of 100,000 people. I don't know the number of how many different locals, but the possibility of taking information from each one. Back when I started, the big thing was a boomer, because he brought information from one local to another local. They shared things. I had actually gone to the training programs down in San Diego back in the 90s. I haven't been to Ann Arbor yet, but they encouraged you. They opened up doors, stop you from being shy. Ironworkers, a long time, are never shy, but sometimes we don't say the right things. There's a way of conversing and sharing information without being, I like to call it just being civil. If there's an issue, bring it up, face each other with it, but do it in a civil manner so we can all grow from that, as opposed to having, I'm ticked off at this guy because he said this or that. Sharing the information is probably the wealth that we have because of the organization, the way it's run by President Dean and all that. We have all these tools to our trade, and we don't know about them yet. So pay attention to what's going on with your local. Impact is a great thing to get on the internet and find out what other type of tools and information they're willing to give us. That would be the biggest thing, the camaraderie and the cohesiveness of 100,000 people.
Bill?
Yeah, one of the things that I have a condo in Florida here, and in the southwest corner of Florida is non-union, and we work. It still works on the Cape, and that's union, and in Tampa, but in Florida here we're building an addition to our clubhouse, and and I go for my walks in the morning. I mean, I got nose trouble. I go there and I talk to the superintendent, and I said, you know, what about this? How come those guys aren't tied off? Or they, you know, they say, well, I try to get them to do it, you know, and everything like this. And then another one, I just talked to him. And I said, how haven't you got more people on the job? He said, I can't get people. I says, you know, the way we work, if we got a job in Southwest Florida and we need people, we'll go to Miami, or we'll go to Tampa, or we'll go to the Cape, you know, and we get people from there, or Orlando. You get people, you know, we get the job. We get the people, trained people that will work and know how to do it. And I've worked, you know, in Limestone County, Alabama, as the only, with a GM project, and was the only union contractor on the job. We were setting cranes. And, you know, I watched the non-union work, and there was like 3 times as many people, and they didn't get as much job as we did in one day. You know, it's the same with 5 guys, you know. So that's where we have to keep pushing the things, because we got a good thing going here. And because of the training and the attitude that we're going to take care of our customers and we're going to take care of our people. You know, I've been on jobs that are non-union, and, you know, we're union, but we're non-union. Somebody got hurt. Instead of reporting the thing to the construction manager, they take them out in the bed of pay track and you never see them again, you know? Yeah. That won't happen in our business. You know, we take care of our people. They get hurt, they get, you know, they get put back to work, you know, they get back to, you know, get medical care and get it done, so.
There you go, Kevin.
If I could, Kevin.
So we're starting to wind down here a little bit. Let's go over to Sherman. Sherman, what would you like to, oh, you want to say something besides?
Yeah, I just have a little bit of different perspective on this. In my career, I ran a non-union residential commercial development company. I ran that company for about 4 years. And it was the worst experience of my whole life. The quality of work, the unsafe conditions these guys worked in, the chances they took, the risks they took with their lives, and quite honestly, that's with their family lives, was unbelievable. Still, you know, walking around doing drywall with stilts on, no hard hats, no tie off. When I got back into the union environment, it just took a huge, huge weight off my shoulders. You guys are professionals, you know what you're doing. The quality of the work is absolutely incredible. And I was so thankful to get away from that non-union environment into something that really worked.
Vic, final thoughts on what you want to leave the audience with about as far as being a signatory contractor and putting your capital on the line every day.
I'm disconnected from my company on a day-by-day basis. Not necessarily a good thing, but I'm not disconnected from the international. I'm not disconnected from the local union. And for those relationships, I value those very highly. Number 2 is the fact that we have impact. And back on an earlier question, when I first started our business years ago, we didn't have an impact. And today, doing work in the construction industry, all of a sudden, for the last 5 or 6 years, it's become very litigious, very litigated-oriented. We get in claims. We're getting lawyers involved now in the first stages of a project, which we never used to do that. We used to sign contracts that maybe 2 or 3 pages of a document to put up a building in Washington, D.C. Today, that contract document is somewhere between 50 and 80 pages. All sorts of risk, all sorts of difficult challenges to meet inside of that. So the contract negotiation becomes different than the actual building and putting the project up. With impact and the education, and I'm putting my co-chair on the National Training Fund on hat, the fact that we've got available a tremendous curriculum of classes that help every phase of your business, every phase of the operation. And they need to be taken on. They need to be used and utilized. You're paying for these classes. Make sure that you're partaking and continue on the growth and development. Education is key. Apprenticeship recruiting, organizing is key. That's where the future sits. But getting them trained and educated to continue on, as fellow folks have said here, is an important component. So I would encourage everyone, if you're not actively participating in these training classes and what's coming out of the University of Michigan every year, and I didn't make to say University of Michigan because Kevin is sitting. Yeah, but
Go green.
We all know that. But partake. because it's a very high valuable asset. We've used it extensively for younger people to go to the training, take the classes. They're all over the country. They're quite a curriculum, and there's more coming. So Dr. Minchez is doing a good job developing the curriculum for these classes, and please take advantage of it. Thank you.
Sherm, wrap up.
I'm just going to get a little off topic here, if I could, for a second, Kevin. My relationship with the ironworkers has been incredible. You were a big part of it. I remember the first General Council meeting I went to, and you sang the national anthems for U.S. and Canada. Great singer, by the way.
And I'm glad the choirs take over that role now. It's a lot better.
And so I really appreciated that, and it meant a lot to me. So I wore this sweater down here today. I can't give it to you right now because I've got a mic on, but I'm going to present this to you on behalf of the Canadians that are here. You become an honorable Canadian hockey player.
Thank you. Oh, Canada. Perfect. Go ahead, Bill. Thank you, Sherman.
I just have one other thing that I learned in my years here is that when you're raising iron, you got to man the detail gang so they push the raising gang. So keep right on their ass, because that way you keep the building stable all the time, and you don't have to worry about it falling down.
Thank you. Tom?
Well, I guess to leave you with something is the fact is I am an iron worker, and I think it's probably the greatest trade in the world. Contractors can't survive without us, but again, we can't survive without contractors. So there has to be a partnership, a communication, everybody dealing straightforward and talking to each other on the square and making it happen that way. Impact is a great thing. The knowledge that we're giving the young people coming in, the skills that they're collecting, it gives us more to offer a contractor, and contractors naturally will gleam to us faster than they would somebody else because we have a prepared and trained workforce. So I'm pleased with every part of it, and I'm glad to be part of this organization.
Perfect. Thank you. One of the other contractors that I reached out to see if he could be on this panel too, he couldn't do it for a prior commitment, was Carl Johnson. Used to be the past president of Berlin Steel. After him was Dave Hunt, and now Mr. Fitzgerald took over that role as president. But I just want to recognize that Berlin Steel is going to be 124 years old as a union signatory contractor.
Oh.
And they started in the little state of Connecticut, so where I'm from. And now they think they do work in several states. They have offices all over the. So thank you very much to the panel. One of the things I wanted to leave everybody in the audience with was, you know, when I conducted a new officers training and advanced business manager training, one of the things I always said that you all have very stressful jobs, business managers, agents, contractors, and take the time when you're out of work, shut the phones off, give your wife a hug, give your kid a hug, and you know, because it's a stressful job. We get a lot of burnout in these positions. So thanks for what each and every one of you do for us. Thanks to our contractors that agreed to be on this panel today, and have a good rest of the conference. So thank you.